Good morning, colleagues in this very cold weather. Thank you for joining for our discussion this morning. My name is Lebele Tswalo. I'm the supply chain coach, and I'm definitely looking forward to engaging with yourself. Are you ready for us this morning? The exciting part about today's session is that we are also going live on LinkedIn. I think we've been using this platform for other areas, but today we've also gone live on LinkedIn and Facebook. Today we are speaking supply chain transformation. Are you ready for that? Colleagues, today I'm joined by one of my colleagues, a good friend of mine in the industry, Miss Colette, who will be having a dialogue with myself. Let me tell you, it's going to be a very interesting discussion in terms of transformation. So let me tell you who Colette is. She's an accomplished strategic manager, and she focuses on sustainability, even previously on her roles on other companies. She has been in supply chain management for a while, sourcing and procurement, category management, contract management, focusing on supplier relationships management. She's worked for various companies. Currently, she is with Gibela as an executive there in supply chain, and she has worked for Balo World Equipment, Transnet Engineering, Total, and ESCOM. So, colleagues, I'm looking forward to this chat. It's around transformation. The question is, how do we transform our organization? And every time we're talking about transformation, what is it exactly? We're talking about optimization. Is it the same thing? That's another one. And really, colleagues, let's look at our area as supply chain management to start thinking around what we need to do going forward. Now, let me just backtrack as part of introduction, colleagues. I think we know that supply chain management has always, for a couple of companies that it was once a relative backwater, but in recent years, we are now starting to see that it has moved decisively on the center stage. Everyone is saying supply chain management, supply chain management. We have seen it as well now during COVID. Everyone said we have to now relook at our supply chains to see how optimal they are. So we know already that a well-managed supply chain operation is increasingly a critical factor in our organization, and it also contributes to business successes. So today, we will guide you on how supply chain transformation leads you through that process of aligning your activities towards business strategic goals and how to implement it. So we want to make sure that by the time we finish off today, you have a roadmap on what to do and how to do it as well. And colleagues, I really have to say that there is no single right approach in all of this. But what is common to almost every supply chain transformation is that it seeks to align supply chain with the company's overall goals. Colette, you heard it. I said there is no single approach. And I really want to hear your view around that, because so many things happen. We are a dynamic supply chain right now. And I always say that you can come up with all these beautiful ideas. It's like you have one strategy today, tomorrow it changes because of the dynamics, the macro factors in the industry. So tell us, how do we work towards a supply chain transformed organization? And also, if you can just share with us, what is it all about? This supply chain transformation. Now tell us, what is this supply chain transformation all about?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the beautiful introduction to the topic, and also how you've described myself. I think your statement in that there is no single approach to it, no, there is no right answer. And I think I'll qualify that before I explain what I think it is. Why at the moment approach, it's because of the dynamic time that we face and the different instances that we are living under. To start off with, I strongly believe that if one looks at supply chain transformation, if one understood that if we're talking transformation, number one, we're talking efficiency, we're talking optimization. There was a time where companies were looking at Lean and Six Sigma in terms of just optimization and efficiency in running their businesses. But at the moment, if we look at our scopes as well and where are we, we're talking about repositioning ourselves, repositioning our departments, and repositioning how the company takes seriously its supply chain and how we look at the value chain, the end-to-end side of things. And I think if one were to look at how we used to do procurement in the past, I think we are moving from a tactical process into a more strategic process. Mm-hmm. And what do I mean really by that? If I'm talking about tactical to a more strategic, I'm talking of supply chain. And supply chain inclusivity also includes the entire business. If one looks at the entire business and in terms of optimizing it, it's not about how we buy, number one. And it's not about
what. I'm going to park it there. I like that conversation. You heard it, colleagues. It's about also inclusivity in that process. And I'm wondering this morning, have we got CEOs out there? Have we got CFOs out there? Are you part of supply chain transformation? Colleagues, I want to hear your view. Are your CEOs part of these conversations when you talk about supply chain transformation, or whoever you are reporting to? Are your engineers part of your technical teams? Are they all part of supply chain transformation? I would really like to hear that, because from our side, we will always talk about optimization, and what happens is, we end up being the ones in supply chain that focus on that. So briefly, what it means that supply chain transformation is primarily about aligning the supply chain with overarching business goals so that we can achieve maximum efficiency. You heard it. It's around achieving maximum efficiencies. So Colette, if you can tell me, where do we start with this process?
Thank you, Lebo. I think it's you start where you are. There is no better place to start other than understanding where you are, because for us within supply chain, we must first understand what are your drivers within supply chain, understand what your drivers are, and do an assessment fully of your supply chain state. And over and above that, you then developing, because once you've done the assessment, that's where you know where your baseline is. And without understanding your baseline, you are in trouble. In fact, if I were to go into a conversation I had yesterday, I got a call from a gentleman in the mining industry who actually said to me, Colette, help me. I'm looking for a person for the next 3 months who can assist us in assessing where we are, who can assist us in putting processes in place, who can assist us in understanding where we're currently sitting with preferential procurement, who can assist us with aligning our specification versus the way that we are buying, versus the way that we are paying, looking at the entire value chain from each business and aligning it. Because he says to me, currently, they actually got an audit finding, which was red, and he feels that there is absolutely nothing in the business that is working, and there is no better people who would assist in directing the business than a supply chain professional. And I thought, wow, we're finally being recognized somewhere, because then he knows that the success and the sustainability that you spoke about, that I tend to focus on, of any business, lies in understanding where your business is, where it's buying, how it's consolidating. Are there any improvements in terms of your preferential procurement stats? Do you have strategic sourcing within your business? Are you aligning with your engineers? Are you aligning with your finance department? Are you, it's not about that only. You look at HR. We do assist them as well in terms of just finding the right contracts for them, the right processes for them. And you look at ethics and compliance. There's a governance process that we put in place that everybody needs to understand. So you look at the consolidation, are the policies in the organization in line with the procurement policies? Or do you have a supply chain policy that doesn't talk to any other policy? Then how do you implement it? How do you then direct the money? How do you align them together to understand that if you correctly, you aim the other? So you start where you are, understand exactly where your business is.
It sounds like a supply chain professional is an all-rounder. a jack of all trades, an engineer, and a finance person, an entrepreneur builder at the same time. And I would want us to talk about the skills at a certain stage, how they contribute to transforming supply chain, optimizing it, and I'm going to go back onto that point. But I want to go back to whilst we were introducing what is it, transformation, and specifically in the areas that speaks to 5 critical areas. For me, when I work with organization that says, come and support us on optimization, I always say that, an optimized, high-performing supply chain requires a management attention of specific, I normally have my 5 critical areas. And one of the first critical areas is alignment. In that, the strategy of the organization it must be aligned with the supply chain strategy, look at the corporate goals, and I want us to discuss that. The second one being value, to ensure that the supply chain strategy identifies suppliers who will achieve our future goals, those who becomes our partners, in the business. And then thirdly, managing the risks as well, and saying that a well thought out risk management plan is needed to prevent supply chain interruptions. And how do we get to that point? And we talk about risk and think around COVID. I think we've spoken so much around COVID and how supply chain has been interrupted in that area. But let me go back to the fourth one. It's really having a comprehensive view. And that is a comprehensive view that looks at the performance of the entire supply chain. How do you examine it to identify the current and potential future constraints? But the last one for me is around the metrics. And, with the metrics, I always say that we can't improve what we don't measure. If we don't measure the right things, the problem will always persist. So let's go back. Alignment, value, managing the risk, comprehensive view, and metrics. Those 5 areas at a high level. Let's talk alignment. I think you touched on it a bit when you were talking about getting organizations, everyone in the organization, everyone being part of the value chain to being part of the process. So if you can just elaborate at a high level those 5 key areas.
All right, thank you, Lebu. Correctly said, or rightfully said, in terms of alignment, because alignment determines the roadmap to which the organization is going to go. To start off with, the organizational strategy that is being crafted, or that is crafted, is the one that we build from, right? In terms of just ensuring that everybody understands where the organization is going, what the organization is all about. And then from there, from a supply chain perspective, we start building the governance building blocks to create the value that we are talking about. And value is created in many ways. We create value by ensuring that there's good, that there's efficiency in the process. We create value by ensuring that we bank savings. We create value by ensuring that we bring in the development, which is in a form of supply development within the various organizations or within the various suppliers that we bring in. And in terms of risk management, you touched on a little bit in terms of what COVID has done. And if you look at risk management in terms of securing supply, I'm actually, to be quite frank with you, I'm dealing with a significant risk at the moment of supply, which is really threatening my environment at the moment, because the corporates that we are dealing with, they've been impacted by COVID, and not only in the country, but globally, right? So how do you balance the global or the local economy versus the global economy when all of us are hard hit? And in terms of risk management, how do you balance the savings that we talk about versus doing things at all cost? So if you look at the value for an organization versus risk management, there is a serious balance that one has to put in place in terms of using a metric that you are referring to at the end. And if one then looks at the comprehensive view, there's a question even on the line to say, how do we and where do we find the correct skills for us to be able to execute this? And I think when one looks at skills assessment, one looks at, number one, we look at the bodies that we are currently aligning with. We've got SIPs, we've got SAPICs, we've got various bodies that we are working with within our industry. But over and above that, I think from a supply chain perspective, we are now talking at an overarching, because we are now working with people with a legal background within supply chain, and you look at how they assist us in terms of just aligning and putting things in place and looking at the risk that we are talking to. We are talking to economists, right? So economists are helping us in order to foresee things and to look at the long-term view and to understand that buying now in bulk, what's going to be the impact going forward, or buying small now, what's going to be the impact of the value of the currency that we are dealing with locally and abroad. If we're looking at the engineers, they help us to think outside of a box. And I think what's more important for me, for supply chain professionals, is that we also need to deter the problem. We must forever be solution driven. So if we're a metrics that we put in place, it must always be solution driven. Because if you're not solution driven and you're stuck with the problem, you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to go around and around and around. And I strongly believe that from a supply chain transformation, it really starts with the solution in mind. Where are you going?
Just give me two metrics, two or three metrics that the colleagues can look at as part of measuring the effectiveness of the organization, metrics that can help track the progress of the supply chain. What metrics can we really look at? Because we've always had some old metrics for years, and I always say that because supply chain has so much transitioned from being tactical, and you said it, all the way to being strategic. I always say that on each and every stage of a layer of supply chain, if you are mechanical, you are clerical, you always have different metrics that you are utilizing to measure the performance of your supply chain. As you get to a strategic level and you're saying you're world-class, already the specific metrics that you are focusing on. So what are your thoughts around that?
Thank you. I think in terms of just developing a metrics, for me, as I had indicated earlier, one with the end goal in mind. What are you trying to achieve, right? We said earlier that we are trying to optimize, we're trying to create efficiency, we're trying to create value. And what is the way that we're trying to drive in? We're trying to create, I think more than anything else, one is not trying. What we need to do is to do now for our businesses. And the metrics that one would tend to look at is how do you find collaboration within these various aspects of the businesses, and where are you going? Because in terms of looking at the competencies and the skills, one looks at, do you have the right people in place? Have you created, to understand your gap analysis and what is your current baseline? And once you understand that, you then start plotting all of those various aspects, and then in that you now know that if for security of supply, this is what you are doing. For savings, this is how you are doing. For supply development, this is what you are putting in place. So it's about value stream mapping your business in order to ensure that it moves in a certain direction. Number one. Number two, it avoids a sad collision of ideologies between where the company is going in terms of strategy and what supply chain transformation is trying to drive for the business. And in terms of then the business benefit on the whole, how does then the business benefit from what we are trying to achieve?
I really like what you are saying, because when you're talking about savings, we're talking about all these metrics, and you touched on something that's very important, that part of optimization brings around savings in the organization. And there's always a question as to who takes those savings in the organization, because the first thing that I've seen for previous organizations when I was still in corporate, and when you're speaking of transformation and supply chain savings, I always said that it's a value chain approach, because A supply chain person will be expected to negotiate. They will be expected to go back to a service provider, renegotiate on the prices. But at the same time, there's other things that could be adopted. For an example, reverse engineering. And that has to be, an engineer out there that's thinking of such initiatives, or we are informing them, we supporting them in that environment as well. So let's talk about now, how do we really now start measuring those savings? Who takes accountability for that as part of transformation?
That's a very good point. In fact, you sparked a thought in my head right now, in that when you look at how savings come about, I was having a conversation with some of my team members yesterday talking about redesign to cost. If one looks at redesign to cost, which normally is an idea that comes from the engineers who then wish to claim those savings. At the end of the day, once they've done that redesign, we have to execute on that and we have to adopt that. But when we come with as a supply chain professional with an idea, sometimes we find that there's the support lacks, because what we fail to understand is we may bring it, but they are for the company, they're for the organization. And I don't know if all of us in the organization have understood the term total cost of ownership, because total cost of ownership is everyone's responsibility. In my previous employment, what we would do, we would go out to the market and we would get the finance team to assist us in working out the total cost of ownership. And the total cost of ownership would have an impact on the specification, on how the bidders have responded, right? And also has an impact on how we've written the document, because full understanding of the document brings in, you can fully extract the value from what you're trying to get out of the market. And therefore, we may report the saving, but at the end of the day, the bottom line of that saving, we bring the value, but the value is not ours, it's for the organization. And talk about collaboration, talk about being in sync with everybody else. We may bring them, but a saving is everyone's accountability and it's everyone's responsibility. And that is why we often say to business, do not dictate to us who to buy from. Do not dictate to us how to buy. Allow us to assist you in getting the value, in getting you the best value for money, in getting you the right quality, in getting you what you need on time. We would do the market analysis. We would look at how we've been doing it. We would look at how the market dictates, what it's dictating, what its pricing is, with your assistance. And then in that, together, again, collaboration, again, efficiency, again, optimization, again, transformation. Because transformation, to be quite honest, starts in the mind before it gets into what we need to do. If we all understood the value we are waking up every morning to bring into this organization, we will stop the silo mentality. And one part of this conversation we are having in terms of supply chain mentality, a supply chain transformation, it is really truly about change. Because when we wake up knowing that we own what we do, we would understand that what we do is not for ourselves, but for the greater good of the companies we work for, and for those that will come long after we've left the companies and we've moved on to other companies, or we've retired. And it really starts with that, in my view.
Very, very interesting. You know, Colette, I just saw a note from Halit, and it just disappeared, but because I've read it earlier. Halit was talking about it is difficult to get support in organization. You know, transformation is always seen as a pain, you know, by organization. Instead of people look at it as a process that enable organization to be more efficient, you know, more strategic and more optimal. I like what you're saying. You also said that it all starts in the mind, in the organization. I think it always speaks to change management. Maybe just guide us as part of this process. When you have to go through a process like this around change management, what are the things that people should consider as part of rolling out a program like this? And I always say that you need a champion, you need you know, a project lead, you need to ensure that there's support across the organization as well. I think that's one of the you know, the most important areas, because change cannot be effected. You're never going to get any support if people do not have proper change management effected in the organization. I think it goes back to what Khalid has indicated on his comments.
Level, for me, when you do change management, the first question that you get from the stakeholders that you are talking to is, what's in it for me? I've never heard somebody saying, what's in it for the organization? I think, as I said, the minute we stop individualizing things, silo about what's in it for me, how is it not going to benefit me, then it becomes an issue for me. Because if we then relook at things to say change and transforming an organization is tough, in this what's in it for me mentality, one needs to change that first. Because if an organization wishes to transform, it wishes to transform to better itself. It wishes to transform to ensure that there's full value for its employees. It wishes to transform to ensure that there's a proper sustainability and there's growth. And growth comes by looking at what you're doing and saying, how do I do this better? When we started a process in my previous employer, of looking at the various processes and what we are doing, we did a bottom-up approach, because I strongly believe that the company would have its own strategy, would have its plan, but at the end of the day, who better to improve than the people that are really doing the work? And we began to do that by engaging the team, the various teams, to say, what are you doing? How can we make it better for you? And you begin to interact in terms of the value stream management. And the value streams are actually led by a cross-functional team, because then you bring various people within an organization. And what you would find is that because we tend to blame each other, if you put us all together, the first hour, if it's a 3 hour, the first hour it's about the blame. But once you've plotted the blame, people start to think differently and say, oh, okay, I think if I use a different wording, if I, you begin to understand what your role is in that blame, right? And if you understood then what your role is in that blame, then you would understand that we all have a role to play. If you look at planning as an example, in terms of what we do, if business planned better, but again, if we did the analysis as well and challenged them every time they put us at risk or they called us roadblocks or hurdles in the process, and understood that for me to be able to do it better, if you had given me sufficient time, then we would then realize the benefit. So starting with the what's in it for us, not what's in it for me, brings in a better change in an organization. When we started at Eskom, what we called, or when we were introducing supply chain and strategic sourcing, part of the things that was done was an analysis that was done, and various contracts were looked at, and with that there was a value that was derived from there, and taken from the process and that which the organization was benefiting, it was taken to various stakeholders to share with people that if we did this and we achieved this, there's this that we could all achieve. And I think the buy-in was easier at that time. And subsequent to that, in my other organization, when we tried that process, the resistance was very hard, and we found that people were very hard in terms of just buying in. However, as time went by, slowly but surely, you have to start from where we are. One, start by coming into their shoes, because we can't come in, if we wish to transform and change people, by being defensive. You come in as part of them. Be part of the problem to find the solution with everybody else. So get everybody's understanding that you understand where they are. And then at that particular time, you find people starting to change and soften up and coming up with solutions with you that would then benefit what they do, how they do things, how they see things, and understanding that it's not a personal thing to a certain department. However, it is a value or a part of growing the business. And what are the value proposition that each and every one of us in a company or organization are bringing in to the bigger picture?
That I've been reading some few comments already from the colleagues. I mean, one of them that just came through from Lungi, and she's saying supply chain management is seen as a stumbling block, especially in the public sector. Indeed, that's how we are seen. If you're talking about optimizing, I think I've been in other organizations where we have to support them in really automating the organizations or making them more efficient, and we were not the most wanted people, in such organization. And there's also a comment from Vuyi who says that effective organizational change management, other organizations see it as supply chain implementation process, and it's in fact an organizational process. And it's so sad that conversations that we have like this speaks more to the supply chain. We have more supply chain community, and we want to see CFOs and CEOs becoming part of this. In fact, a conversation like this, I would want to have it now with the CEOs of organizations to really say, how do you see the importance of supply chain affected within your organization? And then someone Crow said that transformation in organization is seen as a threat. And indeed, colleagues, it is indeed seen as a threat, because what you are saying is that you want to be optimal, we want to do things right, and people do not like it if you do things right. We know right now the process that we're going through as an organization, as a country, in terms of corruption, both public and private sector, is because of the supply chains that are not optimal. People are just operating within supply chains where processes are not working. Technology is not working. People are not the right people for such roles. So let's go now to an issue that speaks to skills. Colette. I'm one of those people that are always forward when it comes to the future of supply chain skills, mentorship, coaching, because I want to see supply chain profession being elevated to the next level. So I think there's a lady that asked a question. I think it was Heidi. Heidi asked a question. I hope I'm not wrong, because I saw it, so these messages are not coming through anymore. Heidi asked a question that she's still new in this supply chain. What are the skills that are really needed in supply? Because I said we want an optimized supply chain. We want to streamline, and you need the right people. Let's be clear. Whatever that you're doing, we need the right people to effect the processes, whatever that we want to do in supply chain. And that is one part. But the second part of it, I've been criticized when I said that supply chain people need to have technical acumen. And I was told, no, I'm not an engineer. An engineer must do that. And colleagues, I still want to remind everyone again, and I want to hear your views around this. Do supply chain professionals need some technical acumen? My view, and that's my view, is that yes, because we need to be able to elevate the discussion, be able to challenge certain scope of work. So how does proper skills, Colette, help us in this whole process of having to optimize our supply chain?
I think earlier I referred to the fact that within the supply chain, we need various skills. I'm an industrial engineer by profession. Over and above being an industrial engineer, I've studied other things that are outside industrial engineering, just to ensure that I build myself up. But what I did when I was studying industrial engineer, I also realized, Lebu, that within industrial engineering, it empowers you to understand production. It empowers you to understand optimization. It empowers you to understand some laws of the country. So therefore, I want to say that it is very important that we need engineers within the field, because we need to be able to challenge the status quo. We cannot be treated as if we cannot think. But I must also say that when you find commercial people, as I referred to earlier, that are assisting us with looking at the economic side of things, you do find that they have since learned that it's not about the money side of it as well. They would challenge the technicality of what gets given to us. But we also do need advocates and lawyers within supply chain. How do we draft the contracts that we're contracting with? Part of what we do as well, we also do lack in contract management. So we need to understand that when we contract with people, we contract with the right people. So we need various skills. We also need to ensure that when we find the lawyers that we recruit within supply chain and the commercial people, we expose them to the technical side of things, because most of what we do is 60% technical and 40% all the other things that I've spoken to, unless we are talking about the indirect sourcing that we do, because we've got direct, which is more technical, and we've got indirect, which is more support services. But not all support services also exclude the technicality of things. So within the skill set that we have, we do need to ensure that we expose our people in the various fields, including in the legal side of things, including in the technical side of things, including in the commercial side of things, because then we miss the collaborativeness, and we do not want to sit in a boardroom with a supplier that is an all-rounder and we fail to challenge what is put in front of us, and therefore we then tend to lose.
So indeed, I want to now tap back to the issue of suppliers. I think there's been some few questions that are coming up now, and really around suppliers, and it also speaks to the skills. The issue of triple BEE and supplier management has been very evident for the past few years. And I always said that when triple BEE came into being, we wanted now supply chain professionals to be business people. And there's a specific technical acumen that not every procurement professional understand with the business language. So part of what we are doing is elevating businesses. That's one of the things. We need to be able to elevate supply chain. The entrepreneurs out there. We need to build businesses. We need to ensure that there's sustainability around their businesses as well. So, which is one of the skills for me that is very, very important as well. Whilst I was stepping on the issue of the skills, as to what skills do we really require. But also, I want to revert to the questions that has been asked. I think one of the questions, and I'm just going to read it, was really around, and I will read it now. Could we please discuss the business sustainability of SMMEs, businesses that have experienced growth and been developed within supply chain opportunities and have done amazingly well in delivering on time, cost, effective manner, and quality? And I like this question because if you remember earlier when we were talking about the 5 areas that we need to start focusing on, one of the things that I said is around value. And I was saying that the supply chain strategy should identify suppliers who will assist us in achieving our future goals through collaboration and providing a means of growing a mutual business sharing of ideas, capability, and capacity. So by us now engaging with smaller suppliers, smaller entrepreneurs, we want to see a success story. And that success story is really saying that, have we really experienced such growth, and whereby as part of us optimizing the supply chain environment, we have suppliers that has supported us throughout that route.
I think for us to be able to fully support SMMEs, we have to know that there is space for them. And we have to know and appreciate the value that they bring in terms of job creation, in terms of skills development, and the economy at large. And sometimes it pains me to say that when I look at big organizations, the more work they get, the more technology they implement, and the less they shrink in terms of the human, or rather the employment. But if you look at SMMEs, the hunger they have to grow, the value that they bring, we as supply chain people, we have to have models that supports them, rather than just giving them business for them to support in a short period of time. And there are things that we could do to support them. For an example, our supply development departments play a key role in 1, identifying them, in 2, identifying the gaps in terms of how we could support them for as long as they are with us. Number 3, in terms of ensuring that we are supporting them in identifying access to other markets other than ourselves. And the other thing that one needs to adopt is looking at the payment terms that we do for our SMMEs, in terms of these organizations, and in terms of just building them and ensuring the capacity that they have that is fully optimized or fully taken, is just to ensure that when we bring them on board, do we want to incubate them or do we want to allow them to grow directly? Because we've got legislation right now that really supports us in terms of incubation. We've got legislation right now that supports us, because at the end of the day, in terms of every company's BEE scorecard, we have to comply. If you want your scorecard to look good, you have to start looking for those businesses that you can do business with, that you can support, that they can help you look good. And over and above them helping you look good, if you do well, instead of not ticking the box, but being conscious about their development, your looking good creates a success story. Because Lebo, for me, there is nothing as important as creating a success story. Earlier on, I referred to the companies that would outlive us. And the SMMEs that we have should outlive us. They should not die before we couldn't even see them benefit from creating other companies or supporting other smaller companies by saying, I was supported by Sing Point, I was supported by Gibela at a given point. So we need to find a way of consciously prioritizing within our spaces that we allow them to compete. And when we allow them to compete, consciously allow them to compete amongst themselves as a point of departure, so that they can understand how to do things. And sometimes we don't even take the time to say, let's identify them, let's sit with them, let's talk to them, let's understand what is their pain points. For starters, others have a challenge of funding and finance, right? So this thing of when we do the criteria that we do to start off with when we go out on tender, if you're going to start by saying the first criteria is financial, are you really trying to develop? How many of our SMMEs right now need your business before for them to grow their balance sheet, right? So there are certain things that we need to consciously think about when we put that criteria, so that our criteria and the way that we do business is developmental to them, not detrimental to them. And again, I'm talking to them, not ticking the box, because they're ticking the box saying I invited them. But when I looked at their financials, they were dying. Like we're talking COVID time, we're talking very dire time at the moment. But how else can we do things differently, right? So if we look at inviting them, you look at the capability and the capacity that they have, should it really die? Let's get them on board. Let's see how we can support them. Let's put those supply development departments that we have into full use, into full practice, into let them run around, do this thing for us. Let our hearts be in it, all of us, and for them again to outlive us. This whole thing that you refer to of corruption must be at the back of our minds, in that we don't want to do that. Why should small businesses be thinking about, if I'm going to get work here, how much should I give upfront? That should not be a case at all in this country and in this industry. Again, talking about the skills, number one, a supply chain person must be an ethical person. You must have your ethics must be beyond reproach. Your mindset must be doing things correctly, doing things in the right way, doing things to ensure that there is something that a person is going to benefit. It's not about yourself. My own benefit is to ensure that I've created a success story. That is what should keep me sleeping at night. That's what should wake me up every morning to say, today I'm going to add value into somebody else in the smallest of ways. In the smallest of ways. If I can't give them work, I can incubate them, right? I can assist them with skills. I can do whatever that I need to do for that business to ensure that tomorrow it is a business that is sustainable.
Yeah, I can really see your passion in developing entrepreneurs, Colette, and I think there's an inward and outward approach in terms of what we can do, for the entrepreneurs. But there's also now what the entrepreneurs can do for us. And I will let me just read what Nobutle has put on the comments. And Nobutle is saying that how do you know it is the right time to let go and find more good stories to create? Because I have seen suppliers who are not ready, even after 4 years of development, to stand on their own feet. And I will tell you, I really support what Nobutle is saying. And I think another question that Sia Bonga Gule asked was really around how are we as leaders of supply chain transformation assist SMMEs to scale up. I think you already touched on that anyway, as you explained. But now he also spoke around having a long-term perspective instead of just deriving profit. And I will tell you why I like these questions and why I support what Nobutle is saying. We run with a lot of ESG programs in the industry. And what I always see is some of the entrepreneurs, they will hop on into each ESG program as if it's an internship program, and they will be learning the same things as well. And we want to get to a point whereby entrepreneurs are ready. Because for me, when we really run through SMME development, incubate, develop, we want to create a sustainable entrepreneur that can run on both their feet without really going back from one program onto another. Let's talk about that, Colette. I think I want us to really discuss that and really speak a bit around supplier relationship management afterwards. And I think that's the last part of SMME development. I think we spoke around what we can do as industry. Now I'm bringing sustainability, where the thought of an entrepreneur in the context of transforming how we buy, how we procure. How do you ensure that even after 4 years, after one ESG program to another, they are ready to move forward?
The question or the statement by Usis Nosipo is really challenging me, Lib, very much, in that when we bring in these entrepreneurs, there are times where the level to which we support them, we confine, number one, their growth, that they can only support us. And we then fail at times to do a full diagnosis of saying, if I'm going to recruit somebody that can supply me with certain technologies, and I can even go to a point of buying them equipment, have I enabled them the opportunity then that they can grow beyond where I am? And I think we ought to look at that. And the other part where I said that access to markets is really important, because there's two things in this, in that some companies or some entrepreneurs, they really don't broaden their scope or wish to diversify. Especially now, you're looking at how the market is narrowing down, with a lot of companies closing down, with a lot of opportunities as well, just or rather diminishing, for lack of a better word. And I think we then again need to press on and press forward, in that it's difficult to let go after 4 years if a company is not fully dependent on you, because if you then let go, what would become of them? In the past, and when the whole process of developing suppliers started, we used to contract properly with entrepreneurs, in that you would contract for a period of 3 years, and that they know in the beginning when you start that after 3 years, somebody else needs to come in. But to Nosipo's point, how do you unplug for somebody else to come in if they have nothing? Do you now take the bread out of, and it's a question I may not be able to answer now, because it truly is challenging me, because it's something that becomes really difficult for most of us as companies. And the other thing on that is that once, at times, we also develop this very strong relationship with these companies, a very strong bond, that it becomes difficult for us to detach. And it not only talks to SMEs, but it talks to businesses as a whole. One of the challenges we have as supply chain professionals in terms of transforming is that once a business gets to work with a certain company and they do outstanding work, they don't want to try others, to enable them to have the same opportunity. So we ought to develop proper models for them to understand that the pie within a global economy is big enough for all of them. And they ought to, what we can give them, they can also go out there and give and look out for themselves. But the approach to which we put in place the developmental steps and the access to markets, for me, other than that, I must not forget, last week we're having a conversation about this very same topic. And in fact, I'm just remembering that as I stood up to say, one of the biggest issues is that Colette is doing supply development at Gibela, Lewu is doing supply development at Singpoint, somebody else at Eskom, somebody else at Standard Bank, or wherever the company is. Have we actually sat down to say, if as a corporate SA Inc., put our heads together to say, I have 10 SMEs that I'm developing, you have 5, you have 3. How do we collaborate together so that we can cross-pollinate and grow these entrepreneurs and share the opportunities we have, starting with ourselves and sharing those within ourselves so that we can enable them to understand that there is actually an opportunity somewhere else. And the person I was talking to said to me, but you have to start that. And I found myself in a corner saying, how do I start that? And I think, thank you for this platform today, because today, right now, I'm putting on a challenge to everyone here to say, can we look at that? Can we look at the entrepreneurs that we are developing? Can we look at the scopes we have, the people we have, and say, is there a platform in this country to which we could then sit and talk and share and say, mine have been with me for 2.5 years, I've got 6 months to go, but this is what they have done. What do you have and what can you do for them? We were talking about all of those things, and I found myself almost in tears because I found myself at pains in that we don't talk. Each company does its own thing, and nobody takes over because we need to share the spoils. Somebody must take the baton from me, and I need to take it from somebody else, because there's always an opportunity to which I may not have an entrepreneur, but you may have, that I may wish to onboard into my supply chain. But can we do that? To those in this call, can we do that? Somewhat.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colette, for that. I think the one thing that is very clear for all of us in our organizations, and I can see it also, there's a comment from Zim saying that, from Langton Chireni saying that unfortunately in Zim we have some SMEs that want quick growth and they tend to cut corners, hence in many cases you treat them with caution, which is the truth. And I think it also goes back to, there's also another comment from the Lefoghanolo. And the Lefoghanolo is saying that the reason why entrepreneurs jump from one ESD to the other is because they are seeking or want access to market. And the truth is, most organizations are spending a lot of money on ESD programs, and some of them they are replicating from one company to another. And I always say that, and coming to your point, Colette, we have 11 subsectors, economic sectors in our country, and within all these economic sectors, we use similar entrepreneurs. As organizations, as we proceed with ESD programs, it's very important to also have a proper assessment prior to even running with such programs, so that we can see at what level these entrepreneurs are. Are they ready for opportunities, or are they starters? I think that's what needs to happen. Because if you start doing that, now you focus your initiatives and you channel your energies on the right processes, right platforms as well by so doing. But also very interesting part, I remember years ago, there was a platform that was created between the mining companies, where they were looking at the mining initiatives that looks at collaboration, where the mining houses can bring in some funds and they develop a couple of entrepreneurs across the communities, or just in general, all the entrepreneurs that they were dealing with. The idea was that instead of duplicating, you always want the same entrepreneurs across the board. But how do we develop them? How do we ensure ensure that we don't duplicate our efforts around that. That is one part. But there's also another part to say that monitoring. How do we measure success? For me, it's very important. Manage her success, measure the success of an entrepreneur, start seeking, if they want access to the markets, they want working capital, let's channel them to the right directions as organization. It must not be a tick box exercise. We want to see that sustainability happening, because these are the entrepreneurs that should be adding value in our organizations going forward. So I would like us to move forward, colleagues, to proceed now, talking about supply relationship management. And it speaks also, we are talking about entrepreneurs. I think part of transforming and optimizing organization, one of the areas to really look at is the relationship that you have with entrepreneurs. Do you have strategic entrepreneurs? Strategic supplier service providers? At what level are you ranking them at that point in time? And I love this topic because when you're talking about smaller companies, they will say, "Gee, this company doesn't favor me." They're always looking at the bigger companies, and I always bring back an element of supply relationship management, which is very crucial within supply chain management, and which really support us when we transform our organization. And I said, there's different relationships that we have with organizations. Some of it is at an arm's length, some of it is very close, and so forth. So, Colette, can you tell me the importance of supply relationship management in optimizing our supply chains?
SRM creates a relationship that is open between us and the supplier that we are dealing with. It creates a transparency of some sort. In one of the previous employment I was in, we had strategic suppliers that we were managing, and with those strategic suppliers, we had 2 annual contract management meetings, to which quarterly, yes, we would have the stats that you send to say how are they performing, how am I performing, because we had implemented a system to which they manage my performance towards them, I manage their performance. And on a biannual, we will then have a full day meeting where we look at the entire performance. And what we found with that type of relationship is that the way it was transparent even when you negotiate a contract. And if you've got that way of trying to assist each other, but the hostility that you may have if you are not really managing, and I'm just saying something from Zilani here, that the SRM must be linked to KPIs. He's correct, because those were the KPIs that we were managing on a biannual. So they had KPIs against me, I had KPIs against them, and part of it were the NCRs that I have that they close, and how often do they close their NCR. I had how often they are delivering on time, and they had the NCRs of my payment, how do I pay them. Sometimes we would send them orders and we would want to short circuit things, but we were looking at a specific KPI that was defined in the beginning of the relationship, in that then including escalation formulas, etc. So Zilani is right. It's very important that when we contract with suppliers, what we call an SLA is important, because then it defines the relationship. It defines how we're going to be servicing each other. It defines the communication channels, and it also defines the strategic nature of our relationship. So therefore, for me, I strongly believe that if we have that, even when you are in a crisis as a company and you've missed payments for some time, and if they know how and when, because things happen, systems shut down, we've got challenges now and again, you've got load shedding, and it affects settings, it affects the system, it affects a whole lot of problems that you have. But the nature to which we manage the relationship with our suppliers is very important. And the one other thing that I must also add, Lebo, in this is that we must also understand who owns the relationship with our suppliers. And we tend to, at times, delegate that responsibility to the end user. And in fact, the relationship is managed by us. because we understand what the relationship should be. We've defined it up front. The nature to which they are servicing us and the relationship between them and the end user is also clear. But it must be clear that at the end of the day, supply chain transformation, in terms of transforming everything, we manage that relationship. It shouldn't go bad without us knowing that there is an issue now between the product that is being delivered that we don't even know of. So the relationship for me as well is about us and our end user understanding the satisfaction and understanding the supplier's point of view. There was a discussion a few or just I think a month ago, that some of our SMMEs that are developing or that we are developing, when they deliver some of the parts, they would deliver them and would find defects. And contractually, a defect has a penalty. And they came crying to say, do you want to close me down by penalizing me? Because part of the price of the defect or the part that is defective, it may even be higher than the price of a part. So one needed to look at how do we support them without killing them, but also just ensuring them that they understand that a defective part today, the impact of it on the line is what? One. And secondly, you can't treat the relationship at times with, in terms of penalties as well, a generic supplier and an SMME. And I think the KPIs may be the same, but the development measure, your point in terms of measuring and monitoring the performance of these suppliers is also key. But communication, constant communication and defining those KPIs then defines the relationship and the structure to which these two end-to-end value chain people will collaborate and cooperate with each other. And I think more than that, just this part that just came into my mind, we also ought to remember that it's not about us and the supplier. It's about the end user as well, who has a task for the company to perform. Thank you.
Langton is saying, I have always have SRM challenges with the marketing department. Marketing believe they are in the better position to discuss requirements with the suppliers. Yes, Langton, we've seen that battle, especially where marketing gets more involved and closer to the logistics environment. Because in so many ways, they believe that they can tell the suppliers to go to Kilimanjaro to get the products there without informing, the logistics personnel, which is all part of supply chain management. So yes, those are some of the challenges that you have. But at the end of the day, it's very important to understand that the relationship management in terms of supply chain, it sits with us. So we need to own that end-to-end process, because our end-to-end process only finish off at the end when a supplier is paid and ensuring that you are happy with the work. But now I want to go back again now. So Colette, one of the things that I always say that when you do supply chain optimization, you look at people, processes, and systems. That's technology on the three-way stream. There is a comment from, and I just want to read it, from Akona. And then Akona said, I just want to quickly bring that comment. And his question, it's really around, Akona, where's your question? I think I'm going to go back to Akana's question but let me just go back to, so that I can find it on my on the comment box here. Supplier management optimization. Supply chain optimization speaks to also looking at policies, procedures, and making sure that they are flexible. And we know that as part of where we are, specifically in the procurement, they will tell us supply chain always is a red tape. So we're making the process more inefficient What are your thoughts around that? Because for me, when you optimize, you have to look at the three-way stream. We've already spoken around the skills already, that you need a balance between the soft and the technical skills. And there was a good comment as well around here. And I spoke around the technical understanding, the financial skills, analytical skills, and for us understanding that the future of global supply chain has got the new skills and so forth. So we need to make sure that we align around that. That is the one part. So now the next part now is around the processes part. Then we'll talk around technology. And I'm really mindful of time as well. So Akona, has got some few questions as well, which I will just bring about. But what are your thoughts around processes, around policies, around all these procedures that I created in the organization when it comes to optimize? So I want, the audience to understand the process to follow in that regard. What are the things that we have to look at when we are saying we are transforming our supply chain to be more optimal?
So the word red tape, I think when it comes to the supply chain process, comes from not understanding number one, the supply chain process. And I think more than that, also it is not understanding what is the value of each person and where they come in. Earlier on, I said that when we talk about the policy that we put in place, the policy that we're looking at and that gets drafted, it's a policy that should be aligned with each and every policy. Why are people not saying that an HR policy or recruitment policy is red tape? Because that does mean that means if there was no HR recruitment policy, you can just go find somebody anywhere you want, and tomorrow you come in and you onboard them and they start working. It is similar to what we do. There is no red tape. It's a matter of understanding the governance process, the transparency. When we talk about procurement, we talk about or supply chain, we talk about buying in a fair, competitive, equitable, transparent. I'm copying some of these processes or rather wording from government, but we've adopted them because everything that we do must be clear to everyone. Why we're doing it, how we're doing it, it must be auditable, it must have an audit trail. So that should not be called a red tape, but each person must understand that planning and focusing what you need is key into this whole process. And I'm using the HR example because every single process that we have has a space in the company in creating a segregation, because then again, if you don't have those policies and those processes, everyone's going to buy from wherever. I'll buy from my uncle, I'll buy from my daughter. And what becomes of that company? And how do you pay? Because part of what a company also has to comply with, it's the tax laws. You would end up buying from companies that are not even tax compliant. Do we even understand as a business that there is VAT registration and there's companies that are non-VAT registered? So there are things that we need to educate, and why we've got the whole transformation of our supply chain partly is to also educate the business about the laws that a company has to, because we can't be found wanting as an organization in terms of how we buy, who we buy from, right? That's one of the things. And you referred to technology, Lebu, earlier on as well. Part of the people, when we talk about people, talked about the skill. And there was a note here earlier that says, how do we ensure the competency of our people to ensure that there is a high level of skill or of yield from the people that we get from our people. And again, I must say, last night I also had a conversation with one of the supply chain professionals, or rather people that I look up to within the field, and she was saying to me, she's trying to put a process in place that would measure the level of skill of her people, because all she wants to do is to develop them. And sometimes we have to get to a point of saying you must develop, and to a point that a person must either wish to develop themselves or they must move and allow others that could assist us to get value and optimized value and process for the organization. Technology, how do we use our ERP system? Number one, to ensure that there is more efficient way of running a business. And I think, again, part of one of the examples that I use when I talk to some of my former colleagues is that there's an organization that I would not mention right now. They are putting processes in place, and they are talking about catalogs, and they are talking about all sorts of things. And yet, when we talk about the vendor master or the database that we have, It's not even in the right place where it should be. And you would put all those lovely processes, but if you have not baselined where you are, again, you're going to have a problem with how do you use the technology that you have to then give the company the best value for money. Because manual processing of purchase order in this day and age is a challenge. You can't finish. You find buyers that are exhausted because they're buying a pen every single day, and Collect today uses this item code and somebody else uses that other item code. Collaboration, again, with our IT people, with our engineers, in order to define things and make sure that when we have proper systems in place, the police that we have and the police that we are using is the one that is assisting us to take full advantage of the technologies, to take full advantage of the analytics and the information that we get in order to show that what we are doing really creates value, in order to cut at some point the delays that that we may have in manual processing things. So we need to then think differently in terms of how we use our technology and how we then look at the data. Because again, as supply chain professional, we work with data, we work with facts, and we convert those facts or that data into something that we can use to enable an efficient process, a strategic way to which we would buy, to which we could then see where we fit in everybody else in our value chain in terms of who buys, who we buy from, and understanding how efficient it is, and understanding how much money are we losing. Capital leakage is one of the problems that we don't actually sometimes look at, that we look at last. Because we are running around doing things just to satisfy the end user, but not knowing the amount of value that we are eroding for the company we're working with or for.
Colette, for that. Thank you so much. There's a comment from a LinkedIn user where they're saying a lot of organizations, especially in the private sector, seem to think the procurement policy is only for the procurement department. It's definitely not. I agree with you. A lot of people say it's your policy, you work with it, but they just don't understand that when you look at the entire policy, it's an end-to-end process. It's the entire value chain, from the planning until to delivery. And it includes finance within it as well. It includes our technical operations support teams. It includes quality management, the check that is part of our processes. It includes the planning. When you're already thinking as a production manager that I need to start planning, already you are part of that policy. So we must go out there and just remind our colleagues that this is all part of an organizational value chain, colleagues. It's not just a procurement policy that only us should prescribe to as well. And it's very important that on their side, as they look at their processes, they must incorporate supply chain as well within their own processes as well, because we will always have a way to be part of the process because we own most of the processes as supply chain management. And, Colette, I want to add something as well. Whilst you're talking about policies and procedures as well as technology, people have always asked the question, what comes first? Is it a technology or is it, a process? And I always say that a technology is that system that is there. You put the levers on that technology and how you want your processes to run. You spoke around delegation of authority, which could be a policy, but you make sure that your system supports you in that delegation of authority, how we procure as well. So it's very important that our processes are very efficient in a way that we are able already to not bypass any processes, because at the end of the day, everything will be done within an automated system. And colleagues, it always takes me back as to why some organizations hate automation. If you talk about automation, they do not like it because they know that automation brings transparency forward. You can see who did what in any transaction, and it's exactly what we are looking for, especially in our supply chain environment. We are able to measure our lead times, our performance. If you're a marketing person and you are selling out there, you want to be able to see how long it took from production all the way, to your customers. We want to look at our cost basis as well, a cost to our suppliers as well, cost to our customers as well. You can only manage that when you look at your spend analysis. At the same time, you need technology to help you understand around that. The importance of technology also speaks to the master data as well. If you want a blue pen, it's a big, I've got a big pen here. Or someone wants blue pen Mont Blanc. Someone want a different pen as well. So when you have a proper master data already within a system, let's understand the importance of automating even our specifications, how it helps us. And it's all part of optimizing, because part of optimizing, remember, it's not just about money, it's around being efficient. There's the money part, is around how we become efficient in terms of our processes and how we save time as well. So, Colette, now I want to get quickly, and just if you can be quick on that, an area about structure. And I want to say that when you really optimize, you also look at how you are positioned as a supply chain organization. I've seen in the industry, some organizations have got shared services, they have a centralized model, some of them have got a decentralized model, some of them have got a center-led organization. And I always say that, especially now, when I look at what we have gone through as an organization, there's been a lot of retrenchment. And I bet that a lot of organizations are start thinking that we want 10 people, 5 people, what do we let go as part of optimal? Do we outsource and so forth? So, which model do you think is more efficient, or do you think that it depends on the organization and the activities? Do you think a centralized model work, a decentralized or shared led, model for organization? Because I know it's very crucial when you start restructuring, looking at the roles in the organization, who's accountable for what.
It actually starts with the last word you used, accountability. What I have seen with a decentralization or decentralized model, if you've got different depots where you've got your people scattered, when everything is going right for them, they are okay. But when things start not going right, they want you as a CPO or as a procurement executive to take the responsibility when things just start going pear-shaped. However, I think for me, there's a hybrid between a centralized model and a center-led model that that one could apply, because at the end of the day, we must be driving as a supply chain professional one. We must be speaking from the same hymn sheet. We must be driving the same policy, and we must also be learning from each other. And what the key thing that we don't do quite often as organization, and I think this doesn't apply only to us, but it applies across, is that we don't often share the pains that we have gone through in a certain transaction, and we don't share the successes, so that some of these things are learned, and some of these things are those that are learned from the mistakes we've made, and those that are learned from the goods that we've done, they are improved, so that we can understand that where are we actually going, where are we actually driving. And I think structurally, when I was involved in a decentralized model, there was confusion across. When I saw everything being moved to a centralized model, I started to see collaboration within ourselves as well. Because what's important is that when you are training and you are skill developing your people, you must do that at the same time. You must move everyone at the same time. And the way to which we measure the performance of every person is clear, and everybody knows what we are trying to do and where we are going. The shared services model as well has a space for it, but it just depends on the type of organization that the company currently is operating under. So, Lebu, without wasting time, because we're almost running out of time, I would then say I would advocate for a hybrid of a centralized and a center-led, just to ensure that you are centralizing the knowledge, you are centralizing the understanding, the operations, so that people are able to leverage from each other. Because there's nothing for me that beats us leaning on each other, so that we know exactly how we can create value for a company or an organization. There's nothing as demotivating as finding yourself duplicating the same effort and doing the same thing because you're not talking to each other. Thanks, Lib.
All right. I think one of the items that came through on the comment has been around the CSD database and around supply intelligence, which I also believe is one of the critical areas with regards to understanding who we are partnering with, who are the people, have they been liquidated before, have they been part of the corruption scandal, somewhere within their businesses as well. And I think it was Tepo who said that the use of CSD database has already identified the gaps in that some of the entrepreneurs we do not know who they are. There is no proper intelligence done on those entrepreneurs. And I think for me, it's one of the challenges when you start running an optimal supply relationship management. Your thoughts around it, just as a one-liner?
I think for us to understand that who we're dealing with, we can use that CSD. I think it mostly applies or mostly used within the public sector, but in the private sector, I think because we don't always have the right policies that actually even talks to how we identify those suppliers, and I think we've been relying solely from the tools like the LexisNexis, the Inoxicos, the Experience, etc., to find that information. So the use of that also helps us in seeing that are we also dealing with an ethical type of supplier, a supplier that we rely on, whether small or large, because these things, they're not only they're not immune to one, they apply to all of them. So I think it's a good platform as a baseline to use for all of us within our supply chain practices.
Thank you for that. I've seen also some public entities, they move towards probity studies as well, in really checking, doing a bit of due diligence, but I think it does not cover the risk of understanding. If I say I manufacture compressors, that detailed due diligence is not really fully done, and which is exactly, colleagues, what we should be doing in our organization: proper due diligence, knowing who you are doing business with as well. Colleagues, I think we've only left with 6 minutes, and unfortunately I couldn't take everyone's questions, but if you have the last few questions or your comments, you can still add them there. I'm looking forward to that. But I really want to wrap up, I think, from my side around this conversation and what we have tackled. And whilst we are doing that, Colette, I want you to really think around what is that roadmap at a high level, because there's some takeouts that our colleagues should take forward from this conversation. From my side, I just want to wrap up in terms of what we have discussed up to so far and what everyone is supposed to be looking at. I think one of the things that we have said, colleagues, is that if you look at supply chain, firstly, we know that we were on a relative backwater. Right now, we are very strategic, so we have to rethink on how we are doing things. And I've also said that one of the things that you have to look at as we start thinking transformation, start focusing on 5 critical areas. One being alignment, value, having a comprehensive view, looking at metrics as well, and managing the risks as well in terms of their supply chain. That's what you have to start thinking of already within this process of optimizing. Now, the step forward, you have to look at various elements, and one is around, we said, there's a 3-way that we always look at in supply chain, that technology, we always look at processes in terms of how we re-engineer them. We always look at the skills as well. So we are saying that when you re-engineer the process, make sure that the technology supports you, but also make sure that you have the right skills. Like I indicated, that the skills of the future are totally different right now. When you start building the global supply chain post the what is it? COVID, the pandemic already. Soft skills, technical skills are very important. Analytical skills, risk management, financial skills, business intelligence as well, which is very, very important as well. And then change management, we said that as we start thinking of this process, remember change management is needed across the board. In your organization, it's an end-to-end value chain, involved your CEO. One other important that I spoke of is strategy alignment. And what we said as part of this discussion is not your strategy. Make sure that you know what the CEO is driving, what are you driving in terms of the business plan, and how you are supporting that business plan as a supply chain expert. So alignment is very important in that regard. I spoke of supply relationship management. They will always be the most critical strategic suppliers. Let's accept it, but how do you manage and how you elevate the suppliers that are at the lower end is very important. We spoke a lot around SMME sustainability, which is part of supply relationship management as well. How do we ensure that we make suppliers to be optimal, to be able to operate at the strategic level? We spoke around the centralized and decentralized systems that we need to be following as an organization as well, and a whole lot of other areas. So colleagues, that's just a high-level summary from my side. So Colette, from your side, we now saying that we are done with the conversation. We have missed one or two things, probably. I mean, we always have our disengaging conversations, it, in the industry. And I said that earlier, that, for me, the most important part for today is that now we are starting now to link it, to LinkedIn itself. So what is the roadmap to be followed?
I think in conclusion, Lebo, you've said almost everything. But I've got one thing that I want to say, which I always say when I do talks, is that if we understood that we are the heartbeat of an organization, we would be able to drive and to align every single thing and to create to transform it in the best way we know how, because we are what pumps the blood and what keeps it going. So for me, it's important to understand who we are. And earlier I just made notes, Lebo, to say the transformation must also be internalized. We must understand what are our drivers and how we're driving. You spoke about the strategy, etc. We must understand our baseline and where we're going. Where we're going talks to the strategy that the CEO is driving. And then from there, we're able to craft our way, because if you don't know the end state, you can't know how to get there. So understand the end state and then just drive and write your processes and in order to allow yourself to achieve them. Know your risks and understand how you can mitigate those risks. Be foresighted. Have some insight of the organization. Understand the market and the industry to which you're operating in. Understand the value that you add, how small, how big. We talked about the micro and macro economics and factors. So look at all of that. Look at all of those factors. We talked about value stream. We talked about draw a proper business case that allows you then to additional strategy and where it's going. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Colette, for your insight this morning. It has been a good conversation, and thank you so much to everyone that joined in on our live stream this morning. Colleagues, yes, there's a question that has been asked if you are having more of this conversation. In fact, we have been having more of this conversation, by the way. Unfortunately, we never linked them to LinkedIn, but we normally advertise them on LinkedIn. We've been having them on on Zoom, and today we decided not to use Zoom for this platform. So we knew that I think for today most of our supply chain professionals are on LinkedIn, so it was very imperative for us to link you in onto this process. Hope to see you soon. Again, thank you. And colleagues, if you have any other questions with regards to supply chain transformation, you can always send us a note. Our details are there. We've already sent them. I'm on LinkedIn as Lebo Letwalo. We have our pages, SingPoint and Awiska. So if you need more clarity, more information, you can always inbox us on this discussion. Again, thank you so much for your time. It's 10:31. So the discussion shall end now. Wishing you a great day. Thank you, colleagues. Bye.